you don't mess up with a country's sovereignty. We know that. We've seen that elsewhere in the world. Well, you just don't mess up with our sovereignty. And to all the American friends here today, my message is clear. Trump tariffs are bad for American people. Ultimately, the ball is now in Russia's court when it comes to Ukraine. End of the day, the Trump tariffs are going to hurt Americans. Canada's position is clear. We believe in a two-state solution, period. So there are no winners in trade war. I can say that through our long conversations, we were able to find strong G7 unity on a variety of issues that were discussed. And one that I would like to highlight in particular is the one linked to Ukraine. All G7 foreign ministers agree with the U.S. proposal of a ceasefire that is supported by Ukrainians. And we are now studying and looking at the Russian reaction. So ultimately, the ball is now in Russia's court when it comes to Ukraine. We had a very long conversation, the secretary and I wanted to be able to have a frank conversation with him. Of course, Canada's sovereignty is not up for debate, and we had a long conversation on tariffs and trade. The approach when it comes to a relationship with the U.S. and through my conversation with the secretary was we will put maximum pressure on the Americans. And meanwhile, we'll work on finding off-ramps. Because we know ultimately at the end of the day, the Trump tariffs are going to hurt Americans. And so that's our message and that's our approach. And meanwhile, I think that on many different issues, what Secretary Rubio and I have been able to agree on was we won't let things that we don't agree on stop us to agree on other things. And that was the essence also of the meeting that was happening here. We know that we're living in a dangerous world. We know that there are so many different issues we need to solve, particularly the issue linked to Ukraine, the Middle East, the rise of China, etc. So that's why I think we were able to actually cover many different issues, but at least be able to say that we will be keeping our relationship and make sure that we continue to talk. What I said to the secretary is Canada's sovereignty is not up to debate. Period. There's no argument. There's no conversation about it. There's no need to talk about it. You're here. You respect us. You respect our sovereignty. You're in our country. You respect our people. Period. Canadians are anxious, and there is a real fear of people across the country of losing their jobs and their families, of being able to have access to decent livelihoods. And so that's why I feel the urgency and the team feels the urgency of making sure that we are putting maximum pressure on the American administration, the Trump administration, while conveying to the American people, who are the only ones that can ultimately really have President Trump change course, to say to them, well, this is bad for you too. And to all the American friends here today, my message is clear. Trump tariffs are bad for American people. They're bad because ultimately they cost more for them at the pump, at the grocery store, when they want to build a new home, so construction, etc. And this will drive inflation, and this can hurt many American people's jobs. So there are no winners in trade war. And not only are we seeing now that the Trump administration is engaging in a trade war against Canada, but it is doing so also against Europeans. And it is doing so against many other trading partners. So what we know as of now is that April 2nd is an important date, because under the executive order that President Trump signed on January 20th, there was a question of reciprocal tariffs that could start April 2nd. And so it's not only Canada watching and engaging on this issue, but many other of my colleagues here are also working on this issue. Canada wants to foster new partnerships in the world. We want to be closer to Europe. We want to be closer to Britain, to the UK, as we've been having, of course, just our historic ties and the same head of state. But ultimately, we know that when it comes to the threats of coming out of the White House regarding tariffs, that we need to diversify our economy. So that's one thing. But meanwhile, there are lots of opportunities in Canada to be able to work amongst each other, to be able to be closer from one province to another. And a lot of our trade has been north-south for a long, long time, but that was not always the case. If you look at our history and why Canada was created, at the time, we created a country because also we didn't want to be part of the United States, but more than that, to make sure ultimately that we would be closer from east to west. And we built the railway, we built infrastructure. So that's what we need to do now. We need to get rid of internal commercial barriers between provinces. We need to make sure that we build more infrastructure, better infrastructure, that we invest in our military. Basically, I could go on and on and on. But there are many things we can do within our country to offset the impacts, the negative impacts of American tariffs against us. And we all know that when it comes to the Israel-Gaza issue and the Middle East in general, ultimately, we need to make sure that the first phase of the ceasefire holds, and then we get to stage 2, and that holds too. Canada's position is clear. We believe in a two-state solution, period. And I think that you'll see in the statement that ultimately Israelis and Palestinians can only live side by side if we respect their right to self-determination. And I think that there is strong support for that approach. The reaction of my colleagues coming from Europe was really about this absurd threat of annexation. Was really is that a joke, Mélanie? You know, is that my team is telling me that I should not comment on that because it's a joke. And I was saying, no, it's not a joke. It's not. This is a very serious threat. And you don't mess up with a country's sovereignty. We know that. We've seen that elsewhere in the world. Well, you just don't mess up with our sovereignty.